Welcome to the 864 podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Randall.
And we are your hosts. The 864 podcast, for those of you who don't know, is a podcast about people in the upstate of South Carolina in the 864. And it's extraordinary people that we think are doing really cool things or have done really cool things. And the purpose of this is just to encourage you to do the same in your area. And if this sparks any interest in getting involved in anything, that's kind of our intent. So we want you to sit back, relax, enjoy. And today we have a good friend of ours, Vernon Bacher, with us. For those of you who don't know Vernon, he started a coffee shop. He works with students from Clemson, and you do a whole list of other things. And so we're excited to get to have you on and talk to you about all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's good to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just start by asking, what do you do and what does a normal week look like for you? Just kind of as an introduction.
Okay, I am a coffee shop owner, and a normal week is I get to the coffee shop in the morning by about 5:45, between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. I bake muffins and scones.
Okay.
Nice. I'm ready to open the door at 7 o'clock for customers to start coming in, and I'm either on the espresso machine or on a sandwich station or at the dishwashing station or wherever I'm needed.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
So that's 4 days a week. I have 1 day a week when I bring supplies in,
Okay.
and I'm on the road pretty much all day getting supplies for
Okay.
the shop.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a normal routine for me.
Yeah. And what days are you guys open? So
We're open Monday through Saturday.
Okay.
Monday through Thursday from 7 to 6,
Okay.
and on Friday and Saturday from 7 to 8.
Okay. Cool. Why a coffee shop?
Why a coffee shop?
What got you to where you are right now?
Well, it has to go back a long way probably to begin that story.
Okay.
I am a farmer by birth, okay? I grew up on a farm in North Dakota. I spent 7 years working at a rehab program where I was in ministry with drug and alcohol rehabilitation, at a drug and alcohol rehabilitation program.
Okay.
Moved to South Carolina. I'm a builder by trade.
Okay.
Okay. And during my time of building, I did a lot of international travel.
Okay.
And so just been in Africa multiple times, been in Asia and different places around the world, and fell in love with people, fell in love with cultures. And so about 13 years ago, we began really praying, where do we fit in the cultures of our world? And the whole thought of a coffee shop, well, we begin learning what's in Clemson. We have a lot of international students in Clemson. They all speak English. They represent about 100 countries from around the world.
Wow.
Most of those countries I can't go to personally. I wouldn't be allowed in those countries, but they're here and they speak English.
Wow.
And so we began really feeling called to starting some kind of a platform. We didn't know what at that point, but we began Prayer Walking Clemson. Where do we fit? Because we felt called to the Clemson community, but really didn't know where and what. I love coffee. My wife loves to bake. And so that is kind of the direction that it really started moving as a possibility. And there was a lot of things in the process of that. But that is kind of the beginning. That was kind of the birthing of the vision. Both of us just loving cultures, loving to interact with different cultures, and our love for food, our love for serving people was kind of the beginning of the vision.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hadn't even ever thought about that. Like even the fact that all the international students, they all speak English.
Yes.
Like that, like it never even crossed my mind of like how cool of an opportunity that is. That there's, like you said, there's hundreds of, or close to, I don't know, a lot of different countries. Yeah. And it's like, we can't go to them, but they're all here and they're all speaking English. And I never even thought about that, and that's cool that it just shows that what one person picks up on is completely different than someone else will pick up on.
Right.
I remember you saying once, like, Clemson was one of the top universities that draws international students, right? Or is that specifically
they're one of the top schools that draw engineering students.
Gotcha.
But pretty much any major university has a large.
Yeah.
Most of your doctorate students
Right.
that go through the doctorate program are internationals.
Wow. Wow.
In a lot of these colleges.
Yeah. Yeah. So you felt the call to international students, and then like you said, you kind of found the things that you liked. And then where did you go from there?
Okay.
Like, there was obviously some interest and then some ideas, but then how did you kind of hit the ground running?
And also, like, how long is this process, in even years? Or
We had spent probably most of a year. I would be coming home from doing a job, and if I was going through Clemson, I'd often swing through Clemson somewhere and just spend some time praying. Where do we fit?
Yeah.
What is our position? What is our place? Often on Sundays, my wife and I at times would go over. We'd walk the campus. We'd walk the streets and just praying, God, where do we fit? Where is our place? And through that whole thing, we began settling in on a coffee shop, and so we began looking for locations. Well, Clemson, it's really difficult to find a location in Clemson. But one Sunday evening, we were driving Clemson and praying, and where do we fit? And we went past this old, rundown building on the backside of Clemson, on the backside of the main street. Not a pretty community, not a pretty area. But there was a for sale by owner sign in the lot.
Wow.
And that's where it started. We did not have the cash flow to start something like that. Property in Clemson was extremely busy, or extremely high priced, and so we really struggled to know, okay, how are we going to get this thing off the ground, because we did not have the cash to do what we needed to do. Just a story about that. We were praying, God, and I had talked to the owner of the building. I actually knew the owner of the building, didn't know that he had owned that, but I had done a lot of work for him, so I knew him quite well. And he gave us an offer of what he would sell it for, but that was way out of our price range.
Yeah.
And so, but I did have a house that I had remodeled. We didn't have any. I didn't owe anything on it. And we were renting it, and that was kind of a retirement. We kind of felt like that was something I would probably keep for years. And about the time that this happened, our renters called us and said, we're leaving.
Wow.
And so we began thinking, okay, well, is this a God thing or what? And it was in 2011. Things weren't selling in 2011. The market was
still recovering.
way down. But we felt, we're going to put it on the market for a time and just test it and see what the Lord says to this. And the Lord said, we're going to sell it. And within 2 weeks, I had a contract for full price.
Wow.
Now, today, that house is worth double what it was then.
Well, that and every other house, right?
But nevertheless, it sold. And that was the money that we were able to pay the down payment and begin the process of remodeling this old rundown building.
Yeah.
And so from beginning to end, this was not something that I planned. This was a God thing. And from the very beginning, it was not something that I could have orchestrated at all. I felt like from the very, very beginning, this was a vision that the Lord had given, and this was something that He was orchestrating and making come to pass.
Yeah.
And now today, people ask, "How did you get this location?" It's the first thing out of my mouth. It's a God thing.
Yeah.
This is not something that I could have planned.
Yeah,
because now we're completely surrounded by high-rise buildings.
Yeah.
At that point in time, we were surrounded by about 100 students within a block of us. Today we have 2,500 students within a block of us.
Yeah, and I remember my sister Sue used to work there back close to when it opened, I guess.
Yes.
And I remember occasionally going over there to walk back to her car with her because of the type of structure that was around there. It was kind of probably on your low end.
Quite sketchy.
And dark and a little bit sketchy, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There were no sidewalks back there on that part of town. There were no street lights. And so, yes, I had a guy there, tried to have a guy there every evening to walk, that everybody walked to their car together after dark.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious. Nowadays, you find a lot of coffee shops around. Every town you go to pretty much has one or two that isn't connected to a chain. But like at this time, was there a lot of, I don't know what you call them, mom and pop or something, like your one-offs? Where, like, how did that idea come into your head? Or was it, because like, I think there's quite a few others in the area now, but back then I don't really remember any others besides maybe a Starbucks.
No, there was not. There was not much there as far as coffee shops. There was Mojo's out of town a little ways, but other than that, there was Starbucks and Mojo's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just kind of got the idea and started looking into it?
Well, I'm not sure if I got the idea, if the Lord put the idea. I think the Lord actually put the idea there. I can take almost no credit for this thing, except just trying to be a steward of what is there.
Well, and when it comes to drawing college students, especially, what better place than a local coffee shop?
I think that's when the best things are birthed out of, is when you can't take a lot of the credit and when most of it is a God thing. And that's where like that's encouraging. It's also humbling for you, because you realize you sit back and you're like, God can do a lot through someone, but really, like, without that, you wouldn't be able to do a lot of this stuff.
There was a verse during the whole process. You know, it was pretty. It was a very trying time. Very much there was a lot of prayer and a lot of stuff was going into this thing because the money was not there.
Yeah.
Okay, I had never run a food industry before.
Yeah. Okay, that's a pretty big leap.
It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. I was working with wood. Okay. I didn't know a thing about coffee, or I knew how to drink coffee and I knew how to make my own coffee, but for serving it and doing stuff like that, I did not know. So there was just a lot of question. Okay, why are we even doing this? But we felt like when the door basically got pushed open, we felt called to it, but the door got pushed open when that house sold. But during that whole process, there was a little box of verses that would flip every day. And one night I was looking at the verse of that day, and it was Isaiah 42, verse 16. And I'm not going to quote it, but it was God speaking. And he said, I will lead you in ways that you don't know. As a blind man, I will light your path. I'll give you direction. And as I read that, I just broke down and wept because I felt that it was like God speaking directly. It was not written to me. It was written. It was something Isaiah received from God. But it was just like, I just felt almost the voice of God saying that to me. And that verse today is on the back wall of our coffee shop.
Wow.
That one there has given us just motivation and direction throughout the years. When things get hard, we realize, you know what? God is still God.
Yeah.
He still will lead.
Yeah.
He will illuminate the path.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, I'm curious, like, were there times, like, even after the house, like after you sold the house and got that direction, were there times that you were like, that you maybe felt like, oh shoot, we made a massive mistake, like we shouldn't
No.
have done this? No. Yeah,
No.
that's awesome.
No, once we were, I guess I'm the type of person that once there's a vision and once there's purpose and once there's direction, I'm going to plow ahead.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
we'll get it done.
Yeah, I love it.
Now, I often said at the beginning, I said, you know what? If this fails, I'm going to fail graciously with it and move on to the next thing God has.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Somebody asked me, what is your business plan? I don't have one.
Coffee.
I don't have one.
Yeah.
God has directed this.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the best steward I can. I'm going to do the best I can.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to listen to his voice and walk with him. But if it fails, I'm just going to, I'll try to fail graciously with it and move on.
Yeah. That's such a good attitude to have. Like, I think it takes the pressure off you, and then it also just it puts you in a posture of like openness to what God wants from you. And that's the best place to be is when you're open to his will for you and not necessarily just like worrying, is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing? Is this the right thing? Like when you know it's the right thing, follow that and like do it faithfully. Yeah. I love that.
So once the coffee shop is up and running, that's another memory that comes back. I remember a book. Was it Yaniv at the time? That was the game.
Yes.
That was played behind the counter. Because I remember a book of scores. Just kind of a.
Yes.
Way back.
During the beginning, during the first number of years, the staff, we would have breaks of probably an hour or more between customers.
Wow.
At times we were a little bit busier, but to begin with, it was hard.
Wow.
But another God thing, I'll just, I didn't take a wage out of the coffee shop for the first 4 years, I think it was.
Wow.
But there was always money to pay my staff and to pay my bills. I never had to go and borrow or anything.
Wow.
There was always money there.
Wow.
There were times when we didn't know how we were going to pay the next bill because it wasn't there the day before, but we were always able to pay our bills all the way through.
Yeah.
Which is just we just felt humbled and just blessed so richly. We have no time to play games anymore.
Yeah, I'm well aware.
Games are over.
Yeah.
Those were the good days, I guess.
Well, they were actually hard days for me in a lot of ways. Now, we did build some good friendships during that time because we did have customers come in and you could sit with them for an hour. Where now the contacts are much shorter. We still love to, dialogue with our customers, but the dialogue is much shorter than it was in the early days. In the early days, the dialogues could get very, very long, which was good also.
Yeah.
So you started this kind of with an angle towards international students and the international community there. How did you get in with that group then? I know you're, or maybe you should just explain a little bit like how you meet with students and what that looks like right now.
Yeah. To begin with, there was several organizations that we would partner with a little bit in international ministries in Clemson to begin with. That we would go to some of their events, and then we would do events as well at our home or at the coffee shop, where Christmas was a big thing, Easter was a big thing, Thanksgiving, and a summer or a fall festival of some kind that we would do. We would invite internationals to those kinds of events, and then through that. Asking them if they would like to be a part of a Bible study or a group of sharing where we can share together. And we've so the Bible study end of things started very quickly after we opened, and it was very small.
Okay.
Very small. We began meeting on Wednesday evenings for a while. There would be one or two international students that would be a part of it. And then at times it would grow a little bit bigger, but Clemson is fluid. Clemson is constantly people coming and going. And so it was hard to keep a consistent group. Through the time of, kind of our vision kind of switched from I still love all international communities, okay?
Yep.
And I still want to be a part of the international community. But our focus is kind of narrowed a little bit more to the Middle Eastern countries. And that has just been such an incredible blessing for me. I've had a number of people that call me their American dad.
That's awesome.
And that's just such a blessing. I introduce them as my son. One of my international friends came into the coffee shop here some time ago, and we were actually doing some remodeling at the time, and he asked the workers, "Is my dad here?" And they looked at him and like, "Who are you?" And that's just what he he just very, and finally they figured out who he was looking for.
Yeah.
But we have very good friendships, very good relationships. We do now, it's kind of changed where we meet once every 2 weeks, and we have a time of discussion. We've actually been doing things with the Chosen video series, which I love. It creates a lot of discussion, a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And it's just, I just thoroughly enjoy it and feel so honored to be able to sit and talk about my Lord, but also hear their hearts and their perspectives. But be able to talk about the blessing and the joy that I can experience through my Lord.
Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely an interesting perspective, specifically from Middle Eastern, from a Middle Eastern perspective on like who Jesus is, and and that versus the way we grow up in our church thinking about things, especially from a Western mindset. A lot of good discussions.
And I've done a lot of reading that I never thought I probably ever would through this whole thing. I've read a good share of the Quran. I have dug fairly deeply into that belief system, just so I know it, so I can understand. And that's been a real blessing to be able to understand, but to be able to share just the hope and the fulfillment that I can have in my Lord. I whenever I get a chance, whenever I get an opportunity, which happens often, whenever I get an opportunity to share in that way with somebody that doesn't know Jesus, afterward I'm just like, God, that was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Then just being able to pray that God would use those words or use what is said to bring hope to individuals.
Yeah, that's good. Just kind of thinking, like, as we're talking, how do you, like, as you were, like, the vision was originally, like, you want to help international students, and then kind of through that came this coffee shop, and then there was probably a point where the coffee shop started taking a lot more focus than, like, what you may have even anticipated. So how did you balance that out between, like, wanting to still stay focused with international stuff, but then also, like, wanting to be, like, a good coffee shop?
One of the things, one of our visions, right to start with, was we wanted to provide a safe place for mentoring, for Bible studies, for things that can happen at the coffee shop apart from me. And I wanted to provide a safe place for that. You can come into the coffee shop any day of the week, and you're going to see groups of people with Bibles open,
Mm-hmm.
which I can be busy and can walk by that and feel extremely blessed and fulfilled in the fact that we're providing that kind of place, that kind of an environment. Yes, there are times when we are, well, most of the time anymore, we are extremely busy.
Mm-hmm.
I have to continually remind myself, I continually try to remind my staff that we are here for the sole purpose of bringing glory to God.
Yeah.
We can do that in our busyness, but when we have an opportunity to say a word or to say something, we need to take that opportunity. We want to. Our soul, our mission, our vision, and our values exist. This is in our what our focus is. Our vision, mission, and values exist as a platform for spreading the gospel and for the sole purpose of bringing glory to God. That is who we are. That is who we want to be, even in our busyness.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I like that. Like creating the culture, even with your staff, like keeping them focused, like to the goal of the coffee shop, and it's not. Don't get distracted by even like the sheer amounts of people. Like still take those opportunities to invest.
And some of my staff over the years have not been Christian. Okay, so it's not and that they don't have to necessarily buy into what everything I want to do, but they have to understand it and support. And they have supported it well.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very blessed.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I love that. What are some valuable lessons you learned along the way? I always try to incorporate some kind of question like this so that people, like, if they're thinking about starting a coffee shop, what are some valuable lessons you've learned?
Don't step out on your own. Make sure what you're doing is a calling of the Lord. And I think we can see that in not only in something like this or in business, or I think it can be in church leadership. It can be anywhere. You know, if the calling of the Lord is not there, it's going to struggle. Listen to the Spirit's voice, and when you hear it, don't back down. Don't allow the lack of something that you feel, because there's always a lack. There will always be a lack of something. There will always be a struggle to get to the end goal. But don't allow that to detour you off of the path. And I guess if there's something that I feel I have learned in this is, I never saw myself as somebody that was going to go in and put cakes together and bake. I never did that in my life before. I've done thousands and thousands. Okay, I mean it's become a part of my life. But don't allow the unknowns to detour you off of a path that God is leading you on. And I think that path is not going to be a coffee shop for very many people. There's not room for that many things like that. But I think anything that God is calling a person into, listen to the Spirit. Listen to the voice, and don't get sidetracked by lack. Because there will always be that.
I'm always kind of interested when you talk to people who started a ministry or ended up somewhere like that. It's always interesting to just kind of go back and see all the ways God was working in your life long before this vision was even in place. Even just thinking about traveling internationally, that being a passion, and then, you learn to drink coffee and enjoy it. And just kind of the steps that God had you taking on your way there. But then on your end of it, I think there's a lot of Christians in the world that me being one of them, I think sometimes I like to think that I'm waiting on God and trying to hear from God, but not always actually seeking him out in the way that I should be. And just listening to you talk about, you would go to Clemson, you felt like that was a place where you needed to be. I think the temptation these days is, I kind of want to end up doing that someday, but I'm sort of busy right now and I'm distracted. And a year later, that idea comes up again, but then I get distracted again. And just hearing the intentional step of going there, praying, giving God time to focus your attention where he wants you to be looking. I think that's so important, especially for my generation. I mean, it's important for everyone, but we're in a place now where if you want to hear from God, you really do have to be intentional about it, because everything around you wants to distract. And I love hearing that, how when you make time to listen, God is going to speak and he's going to direct you.
He will.
Yeah.
He will.
The thing I've been thinking about, like what you were sharing about, like you making cakes and like washing dishes, stuff like that. I think it's important for us, like as we have all these guests on, and like even for whoever's listening to this podcast, like as you're listening to these people back to back to back, like to find the parallels of these great leaders. And I think like even just last episode was Daniel, and he said that one thing he's learned is to just be a student of what he does and like student of his craft. And instead of thinking he has everything together, like be humble enough to be like, I need to learn how to do this better. And then also like he worked like all the different spots at camp, and it helped him lead better. And I think like for you being willing to say like, yeah, I'm going to wash dishes today because like A, it needs to get done and there's a vision here, but then B, like, so your employees see that and they're on board with that, and they see that like, oh, like we're doing this because we believe in it. And then also like I think you had to be a student of the coffee shop world because you didn't have that experience. Like you weren't.
I had to learn a lot.
Yeah, you weren't raised like for me. If I would have ended up taking over my parents' restaurant, a lot of that like would have came pretty naturally. But like for you, it'd be like me starting a construction company. Like I would have to learn everything, and so I think you knew what God wanted, and you knew His plan, but you had to buy into that, and you had to learn. And I think that's a sign of a good leader, and I think that's something that I want to take away is like if you want to be a good leader, like take those action steps to like seek out God's will for you and where He wants you to lead out, and then also like be a student of that, and like don't think that you're already have all the answers, but instead like see where you can learn and improve, and also just don't be afraid to do the nitty gritty and bake cakes. But
I went to, this is something, I had to learn everything about coffee for the most part. I did not know an espresso machine, didn't know how they worked, didn't know how the science behind it, but I learned that. And we went to a big coffee fest down in Atlanta quite a few years ago, just to be able to learn how to do things better. I took a latte art class.
Nice.
Just because I wanted to learn. I wanted to know how to present things well. And that's something that we feel very, very passionate about. We want to give things. We want to present things well, both in product as well as in the way we treat people and the way we respond to people. We want them to understand and that they are cared for, that they are worthy. And I guess the verse that would impact my way of doing things from a day-to-day basis. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it well as unto the Lord. And that can be anything. That can be the way I make a latte, the way I wash dishes, the way I make a sandwich, the way I present myself to my customer base. whatever your hand finds to do, do it well.
Yeah.
As to the Lord, not to yourself, not to bringing glory to yourself, but to the Lord.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We still have time. We're not over yet, but we'll dig into a little bit more. You touched on it a little bit, but what's the most rewarding part of your job?
Yeah.
Like, you mentioned a few things, but what was one thing that came to mind?
Well, the thing that comes to mind is just the interaction I have with customers. We have customers that have been coming in for 11 and a half years.
Wow.
We have customers that came in for 8-9 years and have passed away, which is you feel like you've lost a friend. But we have our regulars that are there most days, and just being able to greet them by their name and be able to walk with them when things are not going well, be able to put your arm around them and care for them.
Yeah.
That is probably the most rewarding.
Yeah.
Is just the connection I have with the Clemson community. We have hundreds of people walk through that door every day, and so you get to meet a lot of people. And walking through the building, watching older people mentoring younger people with their Bibles open. Watching young people sitting in a circle, sometimes up to 8 to 10 people with their Bibles open, discussing the Word of God. That just warms your heart to be able to see that kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
And so, what is the most rewarding? It's that.
Yeah.
It's that interaction with people and being able to continue that relationship as the years go on.
Yeah, I think, just real quick, I think it's cool that the original plan to go to Clemson was to build relationships, and then kind of through a whole whirlwind of like coffee shop, international missions, visions, and like house selling, all that through all that. At the end of the day, like fast forward 12 years now, and like the most rewarding part of your job is back to that original mission. And
it is.
I think it's so cool how God orchestrated all that to where like you could have came out at a very different spot, but he orchestrated all that and led you back to this. Like that is still the most rewarding part. And I think that shows that you're still doing what God's calling you to do. Like if you would have come out 12 years from now and now the most rewarding part of your day is seeing how much money the coffee shop is making, then you'd be like, all right, well, we should probably step back and like rethink things. Yeah. But I think it's a good sign that what you find rewarding now is what God had originally called you to, and you're living that out faithfully. So that was cool to hear. Like that's your answer, because it in my head it kind of like did this full circle.
Yeah, and I like even just the way, I don't know if that was something you intended from the beginning, but how the door is now open for other people to use the space, stuff that you're not really going to be involved in directly. But, you have a vision for the international students, and God is going to take that vision, and he definitely has granted that in a lot of ways, but then also multiplied that out to who knows how many groups and people. It seems like God just loves to work that way. It usually ends up being a little bit different than we thought it was going to be originally.
Right. That's right.
But not usually just worse. It's often a lot better than we had intended.
Yeah. Well, we always wrap up with the same question for every single person that comes through the podcast. And we like the question. I don't even know how we came up with the question at the beginning, but I think we've both grown to like the question. And the responses to it. It's kind of a good note to end on, and everybody has their own perspective. But what is one thing the world needs more of?
People hearing and doing.
Good. Explain.
Explain. I think our world is constantly hearing, and God is continuing to call people to specific things throughout life. And oftentimes we get sidetracked. We don't follow through. As I started the coffee shop, I actually had a couple church leaders that told me they think that maybe I'm going down the wrong road. Then I had some that were very supportive. I actually had a couple pastors from Africa that sat with me in the old rundown, dilapidated building praying for that place in Clemson. And their prayer, I still remember it, their prayer was, God, help this place be a light on this hill overlooking the downtown Clemson.
Wow.
And I feel like what our world needs today is people that hear the voice of God, but then don't just shelf it, but follow through with what God is calling them to be and to do. Not allowing the distractions of this life to shorten or to detour that vision, but being able to hear and then with purpose following through what God is asking. Life basically comes down oftentimes to a couple really big things. If you look at Scripture and you look at the great men of God, you don't read that they've had encounters day after day after day. You read maybe one or two encounters of their lifetime that are really big and really impactful to them and to generations to come. And I think what our world needs today is people that take advantage of those impactive times because they take faith, they take courage, and they take a lot of grit to be able to follow through with what God is saying. And our world needs people of impact. And people of impact are only going to become people of impact when they hear what God is saying and follow through.
Yeah. I love it.
Whatever your hand finds to do, do it well.
I love it.
To the glory of God.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. I have zero comment. That was great.
That pretty much speaks for itself, I think.
Yeah. No, that's good. And that's unique to no one else has answered that, so that was good. I like that, and I think what like you living it out through like the coffee shop and like through that way, it's cool to see that, and it's encouraging. And I think like if you're someone who's listening and you hear that, like let this story encourage you, like pursue it and be active with it, and actually follow God's call in your life, and don't just, like you said, don't just shelf it. I like that. Because it's easy to say like, oh, God is calling me to do this, and then just not do it, but take action. I like that a lot. So cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. And I learned a lot. I didn't know all of the story behind it, and so it was fun for me to hear. And then also just like I said before, it was cool to see kind of the before and then the after, and how God worked through all of that and kind of built that web through it. So yeah. Do you have any other closing comments or remarks?
Not besides just the repeating of the listening and then doing. And I think for me, where I'm at right now, the listening part of that is what really sticks out to me. I want to be somebody who intentionally listens, because it does take intentionality on that end. So
That's good. That's good. All right. Well, thanks, Vernon.
Thank you.
And thanks for all you're doing in Clemson. And if you're ever in Clemson, stop at All In and grab yourself a cup of coffee and say hi to Vernon and tell him you heard him on our podcast. So we don't have any promo code for you, but just go support a local business.
Awesome.
All right. That's a wrap.
Thank you.
grab